In less than a year, the Filipino electorate will once again go to the polling precincts and cast their votes to elect fresh set of public officials that will steer the direction of our nation in the years to come. Welcome to Politics and Beyond, an On Point the Podcast election series where I invite public officials and personalities to hear their opinions, analysis, plans, and aspirations for a better Philippines. Also to help the Filipino electorate in the upcoming 2022 national and local elections. So join me as I have my conversations with them here on Politics and Beyond. Welcome to Politics and Beyond. For our first episode, we have a very special guest. He is the chairman of the Department of Political Science at the University of Santo Tomas and the president of the Philippine Political Science Association. Everyone, please help me welcome Professor Dennis Coronacion. Professor, thank you for saying yes to this conversation and welcome to Politics and Beyond. First day po ng filing ngayon ng ating candidacy, and for my first question, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, it seems that I'm getting an impression that our candidates, medyo nahuhuli sa pag-declare ng kanilang intention to run for higher office. What are your thoughts on this? Is this a strategy? Are they being careful about this?
Well, actually, not all of them are would want to declare rather late, in the period. There were some of them who declared, I think, as early as the first week of September. The first week or second week of September, if I recall, yung si Lacson, Senator Lacson and Senator Soto, they were the first one among the presidential and vice presidential candidates who made it very clear that they're going to run. So, and then they were followed by, I think, Isko Moreno. A week after, Isko Moreno, then Manny Pacquiao, and then so I guess the only ones who have not clearly made their intention to run are, so meaning to say, we're still waiting for them to formally declare that they're going to run, are the women. So number one dyan, si Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte Carpio, and then the other one is Vice President Leni Robredo. So we are still waiting for them to formally declare. Of course, iba yung formal declaration, iba rin naman yung the act of filing itself. So pero once ano yun, sorry?
Is this a strategy for their team? Would this help them if you declare too late, or
it depends on the perspective of the candidate. There are candidates who think na it's a good strategy for them not to declare early on their intention to run. But there are candidates who are who think it's a good strategy if they're going to declare early in the game that they're going to run. Parang nagkakaroon. In fact, when Isko and Manny Pacquiao declared their intention to run as president, parang it put their decisions put pressure on the vice president. Parang nagkakaroon, ang tingin ko dito, parang nagkakaroon sila ng mind game Kasi remember that there were reports prior to the declaration of these two candidates. There were reports that they were talking with the camp of Vice President Robredo. So meaning to say, parang may posibilidad pa na magkaroon ng unity ticket But then again, after Isko Moreno declared this intention and after Manny Pacquiao declared this intention to run as president, parang yung chance of forming a unity ticket was getting slimmer. So mas lumalabo yun ang lumalabo. So for me, parang at least in this setting sa case na to, parang nakalamang pa in terms of strategy yung mga kandidato like Manny Pacquiao and Isko Moreno na nag-declare ng maaga. Hindi naman sobrang aga kasi meron din naman disadvantage if a candidate to declare his intention to run very early. Like say for example, several months ago. Kasi ang mangyayari yun, kapag ginawa yun ng isang kandidato, yung candidate na yun, there's a good chance na siya ay maging object ng criticism o kaya mudslinging o kaya i-target yung kanyang reputation, sisiraan siya. So, I think yung ginawa yung time period ng declaration ni Manny at saka ni Isko, okay lang yon. Oo. Hindi nagbigay ng sapat na panahon para siya ay siraan ng magiging kalaban nila.
Second question, speaking of the unity talks, the exploratory talks, or there have been many sorts of talks between the opposition and the other candidates as well. Again, with the declaration, I'm sure madami, ilang beses na itong naitanong sa inyo, but I have to ask it again, no? With the declaration of Manny Pacquiao, kani-kanina lang, and I get not declaration, but the actual filing, and with Isko Moreno, is still there a possibility of a united opposition? And if there is any possibility, to what percentage do you think there will be a possibility of a united opposition?
Well, to give you I think this is just my honest opinion. As we go nearer to the deadline of the filing of candidacy, the chance is getting slimmer. So, actually, nung palang from the time that Isko declared his intention to run as president, sabi ko that was it. It has already been decided that there's not going to be a unity ticket, at least insofar as Isko Moreno is concerned. Oo, kasi parang even though I'm not discounting the possibility, even up to this point, there is a possibility that the so-called unity ticket might happen. Kaya nga lang, ang aking position is that as we go, as we draw nearer to the deadline, the chance of forming a unity ticket with Isko Moreno in it is as well as Manny Pacquiao, I think it's getting slim. Maano na yung chance, lumalabo na. Nung palang nagdeklara na si Isko ng kanyang hangarin na tumakbo, doon pa lang parang naisip ko malabo na yata to. Probably the talks, the so-called exploratory talks had already failed to come up with a positive result. And the same goes with Manny Pacquiao. Nung nagsabi rin siya tatakbo siya, sabi ko mukhang malabo na rin. Mukhang hindi nagtagumpay yung exploratory talks between the camp of Pacquiao and either Isambayan or the camp of Lenny Robredo.
But you're not adding in the equation, Prof, of substitution, sliding down. Kasi di ba that scenario was open during 2016. I mean, you're not adding in the equation of baka may slide down or baka may magpaubaya in that sense in both camps na kakausapin ng opposition.
Well, I think it's important for us to know that there are rules that we have to follow when it comes to substitution. Hindi, it cannot be done without following any rules. Kasi it's part of our law. So there are criteria, there are requirements for a new candidate to substitute an old candidate, someone who yung old candidate was the one who filed the candidacy, and that he or she would be replaced by a new one. If I'm not mistaken, one of the requirements is that the one who's going to replace the old candidate, the one who filed the certificate of candidacy, the two of them must be party mates, must belong to the same party, or if not, they should be parang immediate family members. Oo. This should be verified, pero that's what I think about it. So it cannot be done by anyone. See, for example, ikaw at ako, I was the one who filed the certificate of candidacy. Then during the deadline for the substitution, you suddenly declare your intention to replace me, or substitution. Ang tanong doon, magkapartido ba tayo? Oo.
Okay, okay.
Or magkamag-anak ba tayo? So
Is it
it's quite
safe to
easy to
say
detect.
that all systems go na itong kay Isko and all systems go na din ito kay Manny Pacquiao?
Yeah, I think so. Siguro one indicator or one clue that there's going to be a substitution that's going to be made is if there is a candidate who seems to be a bit off. Parang hindi dapat siya nandun. We saw this in the case of Martin Dino. Oo, yung nag-file ng certificate of candidacy, and then he was later replaced by his party mate, yan, si Presidente Duterte. So ganun, makikita mo, mapapaisip ka, hindi naman kilala tong kandidato na to, bakit siya tatakbo? Then you would have to look into his or her political background. Sino bang potential na pwedeng pumalit sa kanya? Ano ba ang partido niya? Sino ba mga kamag-anak niya? So ayan, I think at this point, since it was already used by President Duterte back in 2016. There's a lot of people who are going to, just like you, who are going to be curious if it's going to be used again this time.
But do you think if it's going to be used, will the Filipino people buy it once again? Na parang, kasi for me lang, it's an act of like acting like I'm a reluctant candidate. Parang, do you think the Filipino voters will buy that? I should call it, for the lack of a better term, that political drama. Do you think that would play again, or that would, you know?
I think it depends. It depends on the persons involved. At the time kasi in 2016, sabi there was a clamor for Duterte to run as president. And then he had shown himself as a reluctant candidate. And to a point, parang people had, his supporters had, some of them had given up. Tapos despite that, there were some of the supporters who were still urging him to run. Pero sabi ko, it was late in the game. It was rather too late. But then again, meron palang provision about substitution. Hindi pa ito nagamit. Alam ko hindi pa ito nagagamit sa sa national politics before 2016. I would hear of politicians using this substitution at the local level. Halimbawa na during campaign period na assassinate yung mister na kandidato. Comelec, I think, would allow the wife. So if the husband was assassinated, Comelec would allow the wife to replace the dead husband. So this time around, I don't know if it's going to work. I guess it would depend on the circumstances. It would depend on the candidates involved, the persons involved, and let's see if there's going to be a clamor again. For that candidate to continue to run, continue on with his or her plan.
Going back to the opposition and of course to VP Lenny, what do you think? No, parang I mean, wala naman tayong crystal ball, but we can always connect dots and patterns. But why do you think she seems to be very careful of the the declaration and of course the actual filing, because just yesterday she was formally nominated by isang bayan to be their standard bearer, and she just replied with a thank you message, although hindi naman siya nag-confirm, hindi din siya nag-no, hindi din siya nag-yes. Why do you think she's you know, the at least the declaration or the affirmation that he will run for the president, uh, she's taking all her time, and the one question is that nakakatulong ba ito, considering no that we are in a pandemic and time is really the enemy. I mean, kahit naman siguro sinong politician, we have to assemble our groups in the ground, no? Nakakatulong ba itong hindi masyadong pagmamadali ni VP Lenny? Kumbaga, she's testing the waters and exhausting all the possibilities.
It's actually hard to tell what's going on inside the mind of VP Lenny. Hindi mahirap natin basahin. But if we're going to base it on her statements, on her previous statements, it seems that even up to this point, she's still thinking about it, whether to run for a national position or a local position. Take note na parang last month yata or a few months ago, she told us na if ever parang she's thinking about retiring na from national politics. Oo, and if ever she's going to run na lang sa local politics. So, I think yun doon pa lang sa mga pahayag niya, makikita mo na kung ano yung state of mind niya. Na she's really thinking hard about it. Kasi totoo naman, I agree with her that yung the function, the job of the president, if ever she's going to be elected, is not going to be an easy one. Oo. Just look at our president right now. Yung kanyang, yung sa sobrang dami niyang ginagawa, naapektuhan na yung kanyang health. Oo. And sa tingin ko yun ang pinag-iisipan ni VP Lenny. Ngayon, whether or not it's going to work for her, in terms of strategy, whether she would have not enough time to prepare for the for his candidate, for her candidacy, I don't think it's going to affect her that badly. Sa tingin ko, there's enough time for her to do the necessary preparations just in case she's going to run.
No, within 1 to 8, considering today and the remaining 7 days. So sa tingin mo ay kaya pang ihabol ni Lenny, because history would tell us no that even her congressional run and her run for VP, parang she came in too late. But again, the presidency is a different ball game just for me, Prof, kasi we are in a extraordinary kumbaga conditions, kumbaga may mga restriction pa din, but based doon sa sinabi mo, kaya pang ihabol ni VP Lenny ito kung ano man ang magiging decision niya.
Yes, that's right. And ang dapat nating alalahanin sa case ni Vice President Lenny is that her political machinery is still intact. Meaning to say, yung organization and the political network that have helped her all throughout her term as Vice President, they're still there. So they're already in place and they're just waiting to be tapped by Vice President Robredo.
Kung gusto niyang itap ito, all systems go na ito kasi assemble na sila kumbaga.
Oo, hindi na overnight ng kanyang pagde-decide na halimbawa yung sabihin natin isang senador na hindi naman napag-uusapan, totally walang preparations, biglang nakaisip during the deadline, pala ako bilang presidente. Yun ang medyo mahirapan. Pero sa kaso ni Vice President Robredo, noon pa man pinag-uusapan na siya at inaasahan na tatakbo bilang presidente. So kung ano man yung makinarya na nakatulong sa kanya bilang vice presidente, yun rin sa tingin ko, nandiyan na yan, it's already in place. Yun din sa tingin ko tutulong para sa kandidatura niya bilang presidente kung sakaling makapagdesisyon na siya.
for my next question, going back again to the opposition, no? The opposition have madami silang natatanggap na criticisms or warnings na uh, they have to have fresh narratives, uh, good communication in a sense that it will resonate sa Filipino people or the common tao. My question is this: what ano ba talaga yung ibig sabihin nung kailangan nila ng fresh narrative? What exactly is fresh narrative? What exactly is our resonating messaging, no? Kasi parang nahihirapan yung, kumbaga, I'm just asking this because naandoon naman si VP Lenny, nakita natin that she worked, uh, no, her office work during the pandemic and kitang-kita naman yun, but paulit-ulit paulit-ulit na lang yung criticism na parang they have to have fresh narrative, parang they have to have programs that will resonate to the Filipinos. What really is a fresh narrative para po sa, what does it mean to have fresh narrative na kailangan nila?
Oh, yung yung call for them to come up with a fresh narrative is actually a challenge for them to rethink the yung EDSA narrative, yung EDSA democracy narrative. Oo. As we know, yung EDSA narrative, the restoration of our past democratic system and all the practices and institutions. Oo. So, parang ang ang nakapaloob doon sa narrative na yon is that there would be human rights, and then there would be a way to consult the people in terms of public decision making. So all the things that we know of Philippine democracy andon sa old narrative, old EDSA democracy narrative. But then again, over the years, from the time of EDSA 1 until the election of President Duterte in 2016, people had noticed that the EDSA democracy narrative did not change their lives. Yeah, it was, it was quite nice to talk about Philippine democracy, to live under Philippine democracy. Kaya nga lang, it seemed to be favoring the interests of the elites and not the interests of the masses. That's the biggest downside of Philippine democracy right after EDSA. Parang hindi na live up nung demokrasya na yon, nung narrative na yon, yung ideals. Hindi lang na-meet yung ideals. So marami pa rin naghihirap, naghahari-harian pa rin yung mga iilan na political elites, may mga dynasties. And then here came President Duterte, who was very serious on refuting the EDSA democracy narrative. And he was quite successful. So yung kanya naman is a conservative ideology or mindset. So but when he said na kalokohan yan, hindi yan nakakapagpaunlad ng mga ordinaryong tao, so people believed him. Oo. Now, then ngayong election, ito na naman ang Liberal Party o kaya yung Isang Bayan, sila na yata yung naging tagapagmana nung narrative na yon, nung old narrative. So alam na nga natin na it did not work during the Mar Rojas campaign. Back in 2016. And people think na it's still not going to work this time around. Kasi nga napatunayan base sa karanasan ng mga tao na hindi talaga siya nakakapagpa-unlad at nakakapagbigay protection sa mga ordinary tao. So, this kind of ideology fails to connect with ordinary people. And And there are some, the critics of Isang Bayan are hoping na the organization, the coalition, can come up with a new one, a better one, something that can connect to the ordinary people. Kasi nga naman, look at the composition of Isang Bayan. Tingnan mo kung sino yung mga nasa front line ng mga yan. You have people who are in the eyes of the people. We have individuals who, in the eyes of the public, are elites. Kung hindi political elite, economic elites.
Hindi sila masyadong relatable to the common.
Yes. And look at it, nung nag-launch sila ng isa nilang project, sino ba yung mga tao o yung mga schools? Ano ba mga schools ang in-identify nila na tutulong sa kanila? Nilaunch yata nila sa Ateneo or sa Las. But in either case, makikita mo, these are elite schools. Oo. So, it did not help them too na to identify Ateneo and La Salle as their major as the organizations, academic organizations that are going to help the coalition. Oo. So, gano'n, dapat they should be able to shed yung kanilang elitist identity.
Okay.
So that people will be able to
the common people.
Yes, at para maniwala sa mensahe nila ng totoong pagbabago. Mahirap kasi if kumbaga man gusto nang sabihin ng mga tao, kung gusto nyo talagang tumulong sa amin, ipakita nyo muna sa inyong kasi without it, if you're really going to help, look at your background. Diba?
And speaking of narrative, narrative stories, can you give our listeners the advantage of Pacquiao over Isko and the advantage of Isko over Pacquiao, considering they have been clinging into the same narrative that rags to riches story, or if I'm correct, no, they are clinging so much, parang the same yung narrative nila na dinadala from basurero to the father of Manila and from poor to a boxing superstar. So, what do you think is the advantage of Pacquiao over Isko and the advantage of Isko over Pacquiao, considering pare-pareho sila ng narrative na i-offer sa ating Filipino electorate?
Ang common strength nila is that they both came from a very modest background. Tapos sabi mo nga na laki sa hirap si Seno at saka si Manny Pacquiao. And those facts cannot be disputed anymore. Yun ang kanilang biggest advantage. Kasi alam mo sa Pilipinas, if you're able to prove na if you're able to convince the voters na ikaw talaga ay laki sa hirap and then eventually you became successful, maraming makaka-connect sa'yo, marami ang mga botante na magkakaroon ng gusto sa nangyari sa buhay mo. And they would think na just because you came, you were once a part of their economic class, makaka-relate ka sa kung ano ang kahirapan na pinagdadaanan nila ngayon. And you would find ways in order to solve their problems. So, kung man ikaw yung ginagawa nilang pag-asa. Ngayon, as to the what we call this advantage of one over the other, one clear advantage of Isko Moreno over Manny Pacquiao is his education. Despite the fact na hindi naka-afford na makapag-aral si Isko Moreno dahil nga sa kanyang kahirapan, nung umangat-angat ang kanyang buhay niya, nung naging public servant siya, doon niya sinamantala na makapag-aral. Oo, I think meron siyang college degree kahit late na. Tapos nakapag-masters din siya sa Kennedy School of Government. Dahil sa scholarship to Kasi yung mga academic institutions yung mga Western academic institutions, meron silang nakalat na fund at may mga programa sila para i-upgrade yung skills ng mga politicians na nandoon, na nagsisilbi sa mga mahihirap na bansa. At kasama tayo doon. Kaya meron tayong mga public officials na mayroong masters o kaya may training galing sa Kennedy School of Government, o kaya sa kung saan man, yung mga Ivy League. And greenup ni yung ganung opportunity ni Isko Moreno when he was still, I think, a councilor or vice mayor. So greenup niya yon. Kay Manny Pacquiao naman, well, he tried to, gain, he tried to get some education. Kasi alam naman natin hindi siya nakatapos kasi nagboxing agad siya.
Yes.
Oo, when he was a teenager. So sinubukan niya magkaroon ng edukasyon, kaya nga lang na-criticize pa ito kasi ang lumalabas daw sa record ay tinapos niya ang isang college degree sa political science sa loob lang ng 3 buwan.
Yes.
And his camp did not bother to explain kung bakit naging 3 buwan. There's probably a reason behind it. O kasi isang executive program. O isa itong executive program and hindi natin alam kung ano yung arrangement sa isang executive program. But nevertheless, in the eyes of the public, in the eyes of the people, pagdating sa edukasyon, kasi alam naman nila itong si Pacquiao and si Isko that education is really important if you're a public servant. Kasi you are going to face problems which are far too complex, far too sophisticated, and it would require a sophisticated mind in order to break down or analyze these problems and come up with solutions. Dapat hindi ka masyadong as a leader, hindi ka masyadong nagre-rely sa iyong mga advisors. You should be able to come up with your own analysis and judgment and decision.
Yes, or own take of the issues. Kasi ikaw yun eh. At the end of the day, you are
Right.
the president.
At saka there are occasions na para magkakaroon ka ng ambush interview na kinakailangan mapakita mo that you are smart and you have this ability to think quickly, to come up with answers, intelligent answers very quickly. Yung mga ganung okasyon that would require primarily a good education. Second, ano pa bang lamang ni Isko? Or si Manny Pacquiao, I think is well known compared to across the country.
Kumbaga, penetrate na yung niya, yung base.
Oo. He is if he goes to Mindanao, if he visits Visayas, if he's staying here in Luzon, kilala siya. Hindi niya na kinakailangan mag-advertise. Oo. Pero si Isko Moreno, based on the results of the survey, parang kinakailangan pa niyang ayusin para makilala siya sa Visayas at saka sa Mindanao. Kasi as a city mayor of Manila, dito lang siya sikat. 'Di ba? Dito lang siya kilala ng mga tao. So yung bang awareness of his political existence is quite limited. And that's something that Mayor Isko has to work on during the campaign period. Si Manny Pacquiao medyo hindi rin nung umpisa ng mga surveys, mababa rin ang kanyang numero. And I was wondering what happened. Pero at that time, when the results of the first survey were released, I noticed na he was distracted. He was focused on his then upcoming boxing match. Tapos napapaaway pa siya kay President Duterte.
Follow up lang doon, no? Or konting push lang. Don't you think this is very early for Isko Moreno, considering yung experience naman niya, no, is on the local lens only or local perspective? Don't you think he needs to work on something? Dahil alam naman natin pag presidente hindi lang giving of service, no, mayroon pang foreign relations and all. And don't you think babalik lang tayo dito sa kung si Isko, no, I don't know, babalik lang tayo doon sa tulad ng mga sinasabi ng administration na medyo the president has consistently admitted that medyo nahihirapan siya doon sa national level, it is because yung kanyang lente ng pagtanaw ng issue o sa problema is medyo on a mayor level. Don't you think this is a advantage for Isko, and don't you think this run for the presidency is too early, or the timing perhaps?
You know, when President Duterte was still running parehong local government executive, si Isko at saka si Mayor back then, Davao City Mayor Duterte. Ang niyayabang niya is that during his campaign, he could do for the entire Philippines what he had done for Davao. Yung ginawa niya sa Davao, naayos yung peace and order problem, natanggal niya yung mga communist insurgents, natanggal niya yung mga drug addicts, yung mga pushers ng illegal drugs, napatino niya yung Davao City. Ang sabi niya, before he became mayor of Davao City, the city was in a bad condition. So you can see his parang he has an evidence of what he could do for the entire Philippines. And then when he won, nakita natin na ano yung mga shortcomings niya. And yung shortcomings niya, people have said na probably because he was a local executive before he became president. At magkaiba ang skill set, sabihin natin skill set na kinakailangan, at saka yung level of exposure to political, social, economic problems. Kasi geographically very limited ang teritoryo na geographical space na pinapamahalaan ng isang local executive. Maliit lang kumpara sa buong Pilipinas. So mas madaling kukonti ang problema, mas madaling isolve ang problema. Say for example, if it's a garbage problem, limited lang yan sa city mo, napakadaling isolve yan. Diba? So that would probably require 100 garbage trucks. Pero kung buong Pilipinas, garbage problem, baka menace na yan sa environment. It would have an impact on our environment and so on and so forth. So nakita natin sa case ni President Duterte kung ano ang pwede at hindi pwedeng yung strength at saka yung weakness ng isang nanggaling sa isang local position. Na mahirap pala, hindi pala ganun kadali isolve ang problema ng Pilipinas kung manggagaling ka sa local position. Ganon din ang maaring ibato na criticism against the candidacy of Mayor Isko Moreno. Tama ka sa sinabi mo na may mga aspeto ng governance or areas of governance na hindi na train ang isang mayor, hindi na expose ang isang mayor. And a good example of which is foreign policy and national security. Yan ang mga bagay na pag naging presidente ang isang mayor, wala pa silang experience, wala pa silang exposure. So, pag nagkaroon sila ng problema pagdating sa national security, pag nagkaroon sila ng problema pagdating sa foreign policy, more often than not, magre-rely sila sa kanilang advisors. Oo. So, mas maganda sana kung ikaw yung tatakbong presidente ay nasa national position na bago pa siya naging presidente. So I'm referring here to either vice president, senator, ganyan. O kaya cabinet level. Oo, kasi aware siya sa mga problema ng isang bansa. Ang disadvantage lang ng isang candidate who has never had any experience in local politics is that it's kung there's distance between that candidate and the ordinary people. Kasi hindi pa niya nasubukan na makihalubilo ng direkta on a daily basis Kasi ang isang mayor halos on a daily basis ang kausap niya yung yan?
Yung relatability siguro, yung kulang siguro.
Indirect connection ba?
Yes.
Indirect connection. Kasi ang mayor, sa kanyang pumasok ka sa opisina ng isang mayor, araw-araw makikita mo dyan nakapila, mga taga-barangay. So ang mayor kasi, mga local officials, they have, whatever they do, their actions, they have a direct impact on the lives of the ordinary people. Whereas a president, a senator, a vice president, lahat ng mga positions na to, they don't have a direct impact on the ordinary lives. On the ordinary lives of the people. Walang ganun eh. So medyo, in terms of distance, in terms of connection, mas malayo yung mga national politicians. People only see them on TV, hear them on radio, or see them on Facebook. Diba? So, ganun lang. Pero in terms of direct interaction, wala. Mas lamang na lamang ang mga local officials. So, in other words, pareho, local politician ka man before or national politician ka, pareho may strength, pareho rin may weakness.
Okay. And tanungin ko lang kayo doon sa significant drop nung surveys, especially significant drop, for the lack of a better term, no, kasi hindi naman ako statistician. Tanungin ko lang kayo doon sa drop nung surveys ni Mayor Sara, what from 28 naging 20 for the recent, no, September 6 to 11 naging 20 na lang from 28 nung July, and the significant also na parang increase of support for the vice presidential candidate Tito Soto. What though? I guess ano yung nakikita mong reason ng pag-drop doon kay Mayor Sara, and reason naman doon sa biglang pagtaas ng support for Tito Soto?
One thing that we need to know about survey results is that these are influenced by recent events. If there's an issue that was being talked about at the national level, tapos itong issue na to, the people feel strongly about this issue, most likely it would affect the perception of the people within that given period. Nagbabago-bago naman yan eh. That's one thing we also need to know about the surveys, na yung surveys only can capture the perception of the people within a given period of time. And people's perception changes over time. So maaring nung September 6 up to 11, that was how people, the people felt about those candidates, potential candidates. So tingnan natin ano ba yung issue nung panahon na yan. I think it was more about the corruption, yung sa Farmally, yung Senate investigation. Pero sa tingin ko, ang naka-apekto insofar as the two persons that you mentioned are involved, I think what affected their numbers greatly was their decision whether to run or not to run. Noong September 6, if I'm not mistaken, ito na yung period na nag-declare agad yung tandem ni Senator Lacson and Senate President Soto that they're going to run. So they made it very clear within that period, survey period, that they're going to run. So tapos ng panahon rin na yun, and until now, Sara Duterte, Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte, from that time and even up to this point, has not declared formally her intention to run as president. So I think yun ang naka-apekto doon kay sa numbers ni Soto and numbers ni Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte. It's making clear their intention to run. So, mabalik tayo doon sa tanong mo kanina, whether favorable ba sa mga candidates na to kung i-delay nila yung kanilang decision. Clearly, doon sa case ni Sara Duterte, parang nagdadalawang isip na tuloy yung mga tao kung pipiliin pa siya. Kasi ang tagal-tagal niya mag-decide.
But Prof, no, in your assessment, in your research, or in your networks, uh, what are the possibilities of a Sara Duterte running for the presidency? Is she going to run, really,
Well,
or not?
according to rumors,
Uh-huh.
since you mentioned my personal network, according to some of the people I know, she's definitely going to run.
To run.
Oo. Siguro, in, in so far as Sara Duterte is concerned, siguro what remains a puzzle for me was yung bang what appears to be an argument between her and her dad regarding her plan to
Yes.
to run for a national position. Kasi meron silang usapan yata o sinasabi sa media na pag tumakbo ang tatay ko, sabi ni Sara Duterte, hindi na ako tatakbo.
Yes.
There should only be one Duterte who's going to tapos parang wag niya ako dapat masapawan, something to that effect. So yun ang mahirap basahin. Pero if you're going to rely on halimbawa yung mga campaign posters that had been set up across the country, parang it's an indication that she's really going to run. Tapos yung mga bulong-bulungan, yung mga chismis, if you're going to rely on all these things, you would be inclined to believe na tatakbo talaga siya.
Okay. For me naman personally, it's not a question of tatakbo o hindi because given the circumstances that are present, no, talagang to protect the family, to protect the so-called dynasty, talagang wala nang iba, siya lang. No, it's just for me, it's not a question of tatakbo siya o hindi, but it's just a matter of time. And to
Mm-hmm.
me, she's clinging on to again the drama, no, or the cards na parang to act as a reluctant candidate, and ultimately at the end of the day, there she is, no, she's going to run. And the, I hope, no, the Filipino people would would think twice in voting wisely for that, kasi I mean, para sa akin nagamit na yan, and nasa botante naman talaga yung decision eh.
Oo nga, tama. I agree with you na if she's really very serious on her intention to run, she should not resort to yung gimmickry anymore, to any form of gimmick. Kasi yung what you call drama, sa tingin ko gimmick yan. I call it gimmick. Kasi ginagawa rin yan ng mga iba natin mga politicians para mapansin sila ng mga tao. And based on the survey, mukhang hindi nag-work to her advantage yung gimmick niya na parang to portray herself as a reluctant candidate. Tapos involved pa yung father niya. So she should change her strategy.
Okay.
Wag na masyado. Dapat she should offer her straight and simple. Ano ba kanyang gawin? What can you do for the country? Ganun lang, go straight to the point. Tama na yung mga nonsense.
For the last question, siguro babalik again tayo doon sa opposition, no? With all the factors given, with all the candidates na supposedly kasama doon sa unity talks, exploratory talks, and with the survey, no? Considering na medyo hindi naman mababa, but considering the survey of Vice President Lenny, what do you think are the chances of the opposition to fare in this election, and what do you think they should kumbaga dapat baguhin sa strategy para manalo, no?
It's too early kasi a second survey in the series.
Mm-hmm.
That's quite too early to tell who's going to win. If ever it has any value, it's more on the kung gaman, it's more on the what those potential candidates or how these potential candidates could use the second survey. Second na to in the series how it could use the results in order for them to come up with a decision. They can use this for decision making, whether or not they're going to run. So pag at this point, nakita nila mababa pa sila and the deadline is almost up, baka wag na lang sila tumakbo. Kung mababa pa rin ang numbers nila. I think this is particularly helpful for those in the number 40, 45, those sa survey. Did you see the names who are in the bottom part of the list of potential candidates? Mga nasa number 45, nasa number 40. Sa sobrang layo nila, wag na lang siguro silang tumakbo if they have any plan to run for president or vice president. So for Vice President Leni Robredo. I'm sorry, what's your question again?
What do you think could be the strategy considering yung mga factors that are given, no? Medyo watak-watak nga yung exploratory talks. What do you think is the strategy na kailangan nilang baguhin sa strategy para at least to play fair in the surveys and in this election, considering medyo hindi naman mababa but medyo ano pa din yung survey ni Vice President Len?
Well, at this point for Vice President Robredo, I think she needs to abandon her dream, set aside her dream of coming up with a unified ticket for the opposition. Dapat tanggapin niya na masakit man sa damdamin. Kasi alam ko pangarap niya yun na magkaroon ng unified opposition. So she has to set her aside at this point kasi it's not going to happen. Siguro kung meron man, given that there's only a few days left for the deadline, baka ano na lang yon, kinakailangan ng miracle for her dream to happen. Pero she has to move on. She has to concentrate on herself, Leni as a candidate for the presidency, for president. And then from there, once she has set aside that baggage, she can come up with a strategy and focus on herself and her ticket. Yung kung sino man magiging VP niya as well as senatorial lineup, mga senatorial balls niya. So focus on that one. Yun ang pinakamagandang strategy. Abandon the idea that there's going to be a unity ticket for the opposition and move on to the idea that she will have to do it alone. Right? That she is the candidate, that she's the standard bearer. Leni, the standard bearer, ito na dapat ang mindset niya. And she should abandon her previous mindset as Leni as the one responsible for unifying the entire opposition. So it's rather late in the game para ituloy pa niya yon, yung ganung kanyang pangarap. So yun lang sa ngayon. As to how she's going to come up with good numbers sa survey, I'm quite sure that her handlers are very knowledgeable and very competent pagdating sa campaign strategy. I know some of them, okay naman sila. They have been with the Liberal Party for quite some time and they have not abandoned the party. And sa tingin ko kaya nila. Kaya naman nila. It just remains to be seen kung if you're referring kasi to the image na dapat ba ituloy niya yung image ng Liberal Party as the champion of EDSA democracy. I think it's about time for Leni to come up with her own brand, with her own image. Kasi yung brand niya na shape yun ng mga nakaraang actions niya when she was undermined she was marginalized and when she was undermined by the Duterte administration. So somehow yung 5 taon na siya ay inapi-api pero kumilos pa rin siya, nagsilbi pa rin siya sa bayan. That can be a source of branding for Leni Robredo. Oo. Pwede niyang gamitin yun to her advantage. Being soft-spoken, being a pacifist, tayo niya, hindi siya mahilig may pag-away eh. Hindi rin siya naging, hindi niya ginamit yung mga pananalita ni Presidente Duterte na parang pangkalye. Hindi niya pinatulan. So, let's see if it's going to work. Yung kanyang sariling image, public image, at saka yung sarili niyang brand.
Okay. Just to formally end this conversation, I just want to ask you one on-point question. No? Given all the factors, given all the uncertainties, no, to what's happening in our country, can you give our voters, no, the Filipino electorate, three characteristics of our leaders that Filipino voters should be looking for this 2022 national and local elections?
Three characteristics or traits that we should look for a leader this upcoming elections. Number one, I think the next president or vice president or the next set of senators, these should be people who are open-minded, that they'll be able to show that they are not easily offended by criticisms from the public. So be open-minded, hindi dapat kasi alam mo ang governance, especially when it comes to solving problems, dapat open ka sa mga alternatives. Tapos pag criticize ka doon sa policy mo or doon sa programa mo, huwag ka dapat ma-offend agad. Pag dumarami ang criticisms, ibig sabihin there's something wrong with your policy. There's something wrong with your program. So you have to be open-minded, and you have to should have this capacity to listen to criticisms. That's one. And then ano pa ba? Another trait that I would like to look for a candidate for a national position is that we should bring back decency. Hindi yung not in the sense na yung sinasabi ng mga miyembro ng Liberal Party.
Okay.
Pero refrain from using bad words. Dapat maging statesman yung dating. O kaya presidential. O presidential, I think that's the right term. Presidential. If you're elected as a president, act presidential. Di ba? Okay, andun na tayo sa mga macho stuff. Andun na tayo na sometimes it's needed siguro to intimidate opponents. Pero wag naman araw-araw, every interview, pinapakita mo puro macho stuff. What we need is substance. Di ba substance? Solutions to problems. And not more of image.
Okay.
So, yun sana yung pangalawa. Bring back decency.
Yes. Number 3 and the last one?
Number 3, ito pinaka talagang hinahanap ko.
Yes.
Dapat sanang susunod na presidente mayroong skill sa administration or mayroong pasensya. Kasi itong presidente natin ngayon, parang wala siyang pasensya to look into the nitty-gritty of a given program. So, ang nangyayari, parang meron siyang sidekick, meron siyang mga alalay, mga cabinet officials who would be, given so much discretion in taking care of a government program or in implementing a government program. I'm referring to kasi this is a trait na nakita ko noon kay former President Fidel Ramos. Na ang tiyaga-tiyaga niya sa mga meetings at very organized itong tao na to. Meron talaga siyang administrative skill. And no offense sa mga kritik nitong susunod kong babanggitin. I think I saw this also in former President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo.
Yes.
She was very organized. Nakaayos yung kanyang gagawin sa loob ng isang araw. Kaya nga lang, of course, these are just people. These are humans. They have their weaknesses too. Pero so far, after EDSA 1, sila pa lang ang nakikita ko mga naging presidente ng bansa natin, na makikita mo may management skill, alam mo yon, may administrative skill. Ito ang kulang ngayon sa presidente natin. Parang parati siyang pagod, wala siyang time sa mga detalye, naiinis agad siya pag dinidiscuss yung problema, yung mga setbacks ng programa niya, pag dinidiscuss yung criticism sa mga programa niya. I hope that we can have our next president will be a person, an individual who has all three skills. Wala man ako masyadong mataas na hinahanap sa isang presidente. Gusto ko lang siya maging fully functional, a fully functioning leader. Diba? Walang mga baggages, walang mga kung ano man, mga maramdamin. At sana isa pa, sana bata. Sana hindi masyadong wag na 70s, my God. It's about time for us to...
Kung mga bata is open-mindedness and so much idealism, the energy
yes.
there, the rigor.
Energy.
So diba? I guess I just have to leave it at that, no? This has been Franz Joshua Merida, and this has been my conversation with Professor Dennis Coronacion here on Politics and Beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Franz.
And that's it for this week's episode of Politics and Beyond. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and Spotify to keep you updated. Until our next episode here on Politics and Beyond, where we elevate the issues through conversations.